So really the key to build to scale and building teams to take action is figuring out how can you create those leaders in your community, how can you become leaders in your community and kind of push the autonomy outward. How do you actually amplify the agency by building teams and not become agency orders and fiefdoms where I run this group and we have this meeting every month. Instead, I want 5 different groups to get together and them to be doing all kinds of different things, but operating maybe with a similar framework so they can work together when they need to. So there's a book called The Starfish and the Spider. And I highly recommend this book. It talks about 2 different types of organizations. There's the old organizations, which are spiders. They're like a spider web. The spider controls the web. So everybody's connected to the spider, but nobody's connected to each other. Think of an email list, right? Think of an email list. So I can email out to everybody on the email list, but everybody on the email list can't email each other, right? So that's like a spider. It's like a hierarchy, okay? The control is at the top. There's one spider. Then there's a starfish. And in the book, they tell the story about how these people had a starfish epidemic. So these divers would go in and they just started cutting the starfish in half. And then come back the next time, there'd be twice as many starfish. And so they'd be like, man, we gotta spend twice as much time. So they spent twice as much time cutting up twice as many starfish. They come back the next time, there's 4 times as many starfish. And they're like, what the heck is going on here? Funny thing about starfish is, if you cut them in half, or even if you cut off one leg, it grows another starfish, right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Nature's wild. Yeah. But this is their example in the book about an organization that has a hub with many different leaders, right? Because you can cut off any one of these hubs, or any one of those fins, and it can either become another organization, or this hub will replace that leg, right? So this is really an analogy or a picture of a decentralized organization, and this is a picture of a centralized organization. And the point of the book is that starfishes are greater than spiders. They're more effective, and they're taking over the world, especially in the internet era. The Women's March, Invisible, when she's telling the story about how mid-level managers are trying to get more in touch with all the groups, I'm like, I think it's great that all the groups have so much autonomy. They definitely need a little bit more structure, and there's a place for a hybrid approach to both of these. But I think what's so beautiful, the reason the Women's March was so big, is there was no spider to stomp on, right? There's everybody in their community saying, I'm gonna do what I can do, and getting together. So starfishes are better than spiders. There's a great book called Swarmwise. You can get it for free online. You just Google Swarmwise PDF. It's about the Pirate Party, which is in a Nordic country. It's a long story about why they did it, I won't get into for time reasons, but they did decentralized organizing as a political party, and it was kind of a joke at first, and then it took off, and now they're one of the dominant political parties in their country because they're so effective at political organizing. They apply decentralized action to electoral organizing. And this book has a bunch of handy, really tactical things. As simple as when you hand somebody a flyer, just hand them a flyer and say thanks. It's advice that's that nitty gritty and simple. But the most effective thing that I learned from Swarmwise is, they say there's 3 principles to Swarmwise. What you want to do is you want to connect people to each other, not to you. You want to connect people to each other. You want to give them tools. Here's some tools on the internet. You can go talk to voters. Here's some tools on how to talk to each other and coordinate. And then you want to just paint the target red daily. Here's what the target is. It's Tuesday. Here's what the target is. It's Wednesday. Here's what the target is. Every day, you just want to keep reminding them, hey, these are our goals. The Obama campaign did a great job of this, right? They would break down your individual goal and how that added up into your precinct and how that added up into your county and how that contributed to electing Barack Obama president of the United States. It was really amazing. And you felt if I knock on these 80 doors tonight, we can win this thing. And that belief collectively is what created it and what made it happen. So you gotta paint the target red. And then I had a 4th rule. Then get out of the way. So if you connected people to each other, you give them the tools, you paint the target red, get out of the way. Because if you're the leader and everybody's waiting on you to act, you're the bottleneck, right? And you don't want to be the bottleneck. So in decentralized organizing, there's kind of three ways of looking at things. When you're the leader and everybody has to talk to you, right? You're the spider. How does that feel to be that person? Has anybody ever been that person? A few of us, okay? How does that feel?
Invigorating.
Invigorating. stressful.
Heavy.
Heavy. Right. It's actually, it's quite a burden, you know? It's kind of like traveling. Like I used to travel to state houses all across the country, like all the time. And people would ask me like, oh, travel, that's nice. I'd be like, yeah, for the first 3 months, it's awesome. It's invigorating. And then after that, it's kind of like hell, right? So it's kind of like having all the arrows pointing at you becomes, right? It just becomes kind of like burdensome, right? It's no fun. But have you ever been a part of a group where there was really no leaders? Where like everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, right? Has anybody ever been in a group like that? Okay, a few hands, what did that feel like?
Disorganized.
Very frustrating at the same time.
Frustrating, disorganized, rewarding. Both, right? So the reality is if everybody's doing their own thing and there's no leader, right? And it's just like completely all over the place, it can be frustrating and you can also be really ineffective, right? You feel like, what am I doing here, right? I can just go do this by myself. I don't even need to be in this little group. And so what they teach you in building to scale is that what you want to be creating is like tiered structures of connection, right? Because the connection between these people, here, here, and here, that's what is going to keep people involved. And I used to have 50 state leaders that worked for me, and most of them volunteer. And there was no way I could talk to 50 people on the phone every day, or every day, let alone every week. Most of the time, every month was hard. Like we had conference calls, but it's really difficult to maintain a relationship in an organization like this with about more than 6 to 7 people, right? So if you get beyond that, and like you're organizing, it's going to fall apart. This isn't swarm-wise. This is the number 7. Don't have groups larger than 7, right? There's a reason this is 5 and this is 4 with another connection to the 5th, right? You want to be tiering your structures of leadership so that everybody's connected to about 4 other people, right? And you want to be training these other leaders and then kind of attaching people onto them as they come to the organization and then kind of snowflaking out. That's why they call us snowflakes. That and another more deplorable reference. But this is why they call us snowflakes, because this is how we organize. And I'm proud to be a snowflake because we're going to create a blizzard. And it's going to create an avalanche. That's right. So organizing at its fundamental root is the science of social cohesion, right? And our commitment to each other is really the glue that binds that. But you can't be committed to 50 people. It's just too many arrows. So think about how you can create organizations, when you are creating organizations or working on a campaign, that really keep your level of kind of attachment at about 4 or 5, and at the most 6 or 7. And then structure them together. So we had, at Wolfpack, when we worked for the Young Turks, we had state leaders, and then we had the field director, right, the national organizing director, we had regional leaders, then we had state leaders, and then the states had their teams, right? And then we had different meetings or different conference calls for each level of the organization. There are good teams and there are bad teams, just like there are, angelic dogs and devil dogs. He's a good boy. But there are good teams and bad teams. Good teams do things like meet goals, right? If you're never meeting goals, you're not really accomplishing anything, it's not really a good team. Engage others, you're bringing new people in. You're learning and improving, you're experimenting, adapting. You're coordinating with each other, not just kind of doing your own thing. And most importantly, you're taking action. If you keep going through your OODA loop, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we had the observation, the decision, and the orientation, and then we took no action, your OODA loop is broken, okay? So we have a functional OODA loop that's going towards taking action, action orientation. Bad teams don't engage others, don't get anything done, don't coordinate with each other. Individuals don't learn and grow over time. This is one of the most important lessons. People will stick with an organization until the end of time if they feel like they're learning. People will not participate in organizations over the long term if they don't feel like they're learning. If all they're doing is knocking and calling, they're going to do it for a little while, and then it's going to get old, and then they're going to lose their commitment and their resolve, and they're going to go away. So make sure people are learning in your organization. And overall, the team is less than the sum of its parts. So we're actually getting less done as a team than we would if we just all did it on our own. These are the call signs of a bad team. The highest quality teams have what are 5 foundational blocks. One is diverse people. The reason that's important is because there's just, I see the world from one perspective, and there's a few billion other perspectives in this world, and there's just some things I'm just not going to see, right? Because my perspective is limited to the perspective of one. But if we have a bunch of other people in the room that represent different perspectives, they can look at that object, that world, a little bit differently. And if we can adapt our perception to include what they're seeing, we can get a more accurate view of the world, right? If I'm looking at a box from one perspective, I might only think it's a flat cardboard square. But if I have somebody else on the other side say, hey, there's many dimensions to this, it's actually a box, I'm like, oh, you're right, it is a box. We can see things differently, and that's really helpful. It's really a foundational block. We have a common purpose. If people are in your organization, they're going at different things, and there's this constant tension pulling apart, right? That's going to be really destructive. It's going to decrease your internal resolve. Remember how important that was in grand strategy, right? So it's important to have a shared sense of common purpose, which really comes down to vision. I think it's why vision is probably one of the most important things you can have in alignment. You need clear boundaries, right? Hey, these are the rules. If you break the rules, this is what happens. We don't have the rules of every other organization. Maybe we would have some weird rules. But let's set those rules out and let everybody know so that when somebody does mess up, you can give them one, like, hey, you messed up, you broke the rules, it's okay, just don't do it again. Then if they do it again, they're like, time to join a different group. Clear roles. If everybody thinks they're the leader or everybody thinks they're the follower, nothing's going to get done. Maybe you're the baton this week, and it's your job to make sure something happens, but somebody else takes on that leadership role next week. It can be fluid, but everybody kind of needs to know what it is that they're responsible for. And then explicit norms, which goes back to boundaries. On our Google groups for Americans Take Action, before that Wolfpack, we have a list that goes out like in every email. It's like, this is what you do in this group, this is what you don't do in this group, and it's literally on every email that you send in that Google group. And that's so that people understand the norms of the space you're in, and you can hold them accountable to it if they break it. And then up here on that foundation is one of my favorite things. It's like a report card for organizations, and it's like, if this is the problem, this is how you fix it. You remember the story slide? It's like, if they have fear, tell them the story of hope. Okay, this is kind of like that, but for the organizational one. If your organization has drift, meaning we don't really know what we're doing, we don't know what we're trying to do, right? We don't really have a shared sense of purpose. It's kind of counterintuitive. It might make sense since you guys have gone through the hero's journey slides, but what you actually need to do is create a shared sense of story together. That's the narrative. How are we the heroes together? And I know that kind of sounds crazy, right? It's like, are we going to sit down and figure out the story we're telling together? Is that how we're going to solve that we don't know what we're doing? I think you just need better tactics and strategy. No, actually, what you need is a shared sense of story, because you don't understand why you're in a community right now. You need a story of us, right? If the organization is passive, right, and there's no participation, the problem is not there aren't opportunities for action. That's what you would kind of think, right? Why aren't we doing anything? Well, maybe there's no opportunity to do it, or whatever the reason is. It's actually because we don't have shared relational commitment. We're not bonded enough to each other. So what we need to do is sit down and tell your personal story to me, and I tell my personal story to you, and build that relationship, right? So if an organization is passive, counterintuitively, what we need is to tell each other our stories again, right? If it's confused, if we don't really know like who's doing what or what's going on, right? This one makes a little bit more sense. We need a shared structure. We need to understand like who's doing what, right? Clear boundaries, clear roles. If it's reactive, if we're just waiting on the opposition to do things. I've sat in these meetings in DC, and we literally knew the conservatives were going to do something horrible on Monday. And I was like, okay guys, it's Friday, so let's do it now. And people were like, okay, so it's a holiday weekend, and so we can't do it today, but we're gonna wait till Tuesday, and then we're gonna respond. And I'm like, knowing some of this stuff, I'm just shocked and abhorred. So if an organization is reactive, what we need them to do is seize the initiative. We need a shared strategy. We need those people that create kind of a grand strategy, right? And align their tactics and goals and their vision. And then if it's an action, and you're not creating any change, what you need is shared, important word, measurable action, right? So if people aren't doing anything, it's because there's really no way to figure out whether what we're doing is winning or losing. There's no measurable action. If we knock on this many doors, what happens? I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to do anything then. If you knock on this many doors, your precinct will add this many votes. If you add this many votes in your precinct, your county will add this many votes, and everyone else is doing that. If your county does it, then your state will do it. If your state does it, the nation will do it, and we're going to elect the first black president. That is an amazing story to tell someone, right? So if you understand that your measurable action has an impact, right? You're going to create a belief in change and get people out of inaction. So some of these are counterintuitive. It doesn't really, immediately lead, but this is what they found through decades of team building, that this is kind of how it works, and it kind of loops all of the stuff together. Why is the story so important? The story of self and the story of us. And why is the grand strategy so important? To make sure we're not being reactive, make sure we're seizing the initiative. So in a book called Managing to Change the World, Allison Green and Jerry Hauser talk about SMART goals. We want to have goals, but we don't just want any goals. We want SMART goals. And that's an acronym. We want strategic. They have to actually connect, our tactics have to connect to our strategy, has to connect to our goals. We want them to be measurable for the reason I just said. Otherwise, I don't know how much I'm responsible for it. I don't know how what I'm doing leads up to the larger number and see how it all works together. We want them to be ambitious, right? We want this grand vision of the future, right? What's the future we're going to create? Stop playing small ball. I don't want to fix the bump stock problem. I want to fix the childhood assassination by an NRA terrorist problem, okay? That's going to require a big solution. Let's be ambitious, but also realistic, right? We're not going to, go out tomorrow and round up all the guns. That's not going to happen, right? That's not realistic. But we can have ambitious goals that are also realistic. And then time-bound, right? Because again, we want to be on a timeline. We want to understand that we're failing, right? So we can fail better, faster. And if your goals aren't time-bound, then there's never a time where you've lost, right? You can go do something. You can go sign up people at the farmer's market over and over again and feel a little better about it. But if you know you have a goal to reach a certain number of signatures to get something on the ballot by a certain date, you're a lot more motivated. And maybe you'll put in those extra 2 hours, and then maybe a few hundred other volunteers in the state will put in those extra hours, and then you'll win by 100 signatures and get it on the ballot, right? So make sure you have time-bound goals, SMART goals. This is one of my favorites too. This is the action timeline. It's kind of how things work as far as like going from your plan into victory. And we kind of think about like something big happens and there's a new movement, Women's March, Indivisible, Trump gets elected, and then we like start doing stuff, right? And then we get these peaks of activity, and it goes up to peak. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, I've ignored my life, my wife, and my family and my job for a month. I need to go back and do that for a little bit so I don't get fired, right? Has anybody ever been through that kind of situation? Where you're like, you invested all you got, you're done, you're tired, you're burnt out, you gotta go attend to life and buy groceries, right? Do laundry. I feel you. That's this, okay? That's when it's gonna have peaks and valleys. The intensity of the energy and the number of people involved it's gonna vacillate, go up and down, because people are doing other stuff besides politics too, right? Well, what I want you to think about is in these peaks and valleys, what you should recognize that you're on a peak or you're going into a valley for this very important reason. Your capacity to mobilize supporters in these peaks is a function of the relationships that you build in the valleys. So when you realize there's kind of a lull and like not as many people are showing up to the Indivisible meetings and people are kind of feeling tired and weary, that's the time to do some one-on-one coffee clutches, right? Go talk to people, tell your stories, build that relational commitment. So the next time you call them, they know why you're calling. It's not because they need an automaton robot to make 40 more calls on the phone. It's because Mary, who cares so much about this issue, believes that Vermont can lead the way on the environmental justice movement in this country, and that if we get this study through, maybe that's the thing that'll make the difference, and be the watershed for Vermont. Maybe Vermont will be the watershed for the country. I believe in Mary. So I'm gonna come and make those 40 calls, right? And if you build these relationships, that's the only way to turn it back up, right? You're not gonna turn it back up by providing more opportunities for action. People are tired, they're doing other things, they have other things to do in their lives. But if you build relationships with them, then they're gonna come and take action again in that next peak. So in the valleys, build relationships, in the peaks, mobilize supporters. And that's what when you build those relationships up, you have an opportunity for action. You're gonna put that hot trigger in front of motivated people, and boom, all of a sudden there's even more people showing up, getting even further along than we thought we could, right? And then eventually, if you go through this pattern, that's how you get to victory. You keep ratcheting it up every time. But don't get worried when you go in the valley, right? The abyss comes. It's part of the story, right? Just build some relationships while you're in that abyss. It'll transform the organization. This is massive tactic. They say that you want to kind of figure out one thing to do really well. Has anybody ever read Built to Last or Good to Great? Anybody read that book? It's by Jim Collins. It's a great book. He talks about the hedgehog concept, which is like you want to do what you're most passionate about, what you're best at in the world, and what drives your economic engine, right? You want to find the intersection of these three things. Great companies do the intersection of these three things, right? And I think organizations and politics, this is kind of our equivalent hedgehog concept, right? What we want to do is figure out goals and tactics that are strategic, that strengthen our organization, and that develop individuals. So strategic makes sense, right? Our tactics align with our strategy, align with our goals, with our vision. Strengthens the organization. That kind of makes sense too, right? Like, it's not just we're gonna, elect, guy X, it's that now we have a lot more people involved in our movement, we can do more next time, right? But why would we want to develop individuals? Why would that be like an organizational goal? Why would it be good enough to just be strategic and strengthen the organization? Anybody?
Keep the organization alive.
Keeping them alive, but what kind of organizations do people stick with? Personal, where they're connected, involved, but ones in which they're learning, right? So if people aren't learning in an organization, they're not going to stick with it. They'll do, even if you have a good relationship with them, right? They'll only do this so much. They'll only do the tactics so much, even if they win a few times. But if they're learning as an individual, it's like life school, right? They just show up every time, right? It's like, man, I get so much out of this. Not only am I a part of a community that I feel connected to, not only am I accomplishing great things in the world, but I also feel like I'm becoming a better person, right? And if you can figure out the tactics that live in the intersection of that, that's like our hedgehog for organizations. And then just focus on that tactic. Sometimes you'll do tactics and do one or the other. You have to make that sacrifice, that trade-off. But the sweet spot is really in the middle of these three. So the types of political action, there's legislative action, electoral action, and direct action. Anybody think of any other types of political action that you can do? That would be electoral action / legislative action. Any other things? So this is pretty much it, okay? These are the three things we can do. Legislative action, passing laws, making policy changes. Electoral action, electing people who can pass laws, change things. Direct action, going directly to the source of the problem, doing public protest, non-violently, that draws attention and support to our issue, right? These are really our three kind of like weapons that we have. So legislative action, I'm gonna give you one of my best kind of strategic tips, something we came up with for Wolfpack. I took 20 years of working on elections, it was like 15 at the time, and I said, okay, how can we take what I know about elections and use it to pass legislation, right? So we used some pretty sophisticated like targeting methods that have never really been used before, and then applied that, and then went and called voters in districts of candidates. That's why we called Steve Barry. I knew that Steve Barry, this is a little known fact, Steve Barry votes in every election, religiously. I know that because that's on the voter file. And I also know that he shared the political party of Dick Sears, right? And the reason I know that is because you can look at a voter file and say this is everybody in the legislative district, and this is the registered voters, right? Within those registered voters, there's general election voters, people who vote in every general election, every presidential election. Then there's people that are likely to vote in every general election. So they vote in the off-year elections too, and in the general elections, right? But then there's people that vote in primary elections, right? And then there's people that vote in every primary election. The Steve Barrys of the world. Very small number. Here's the cool thing though. A lot of times, they personally know the politicians. It's pretty crazy. We call people and we'd be like, hey, Senator Sears? Or we'd say, yeah, we're calling about this issue, it's really important. The chair of this committee is a really important guy. His name's Senator Dick Sears. They'd be like, yeah, I know Senator Dick Sears. One guy we called, or one lady, lady we called, she's like, yes, I know him. He's my son-in-law. People all the time would be like, yeah, he's like my neighbor across the street, or I drive with the Capitol to him on Mondays. I'll tell him. Or yes, I have her cell phone number, I'll give her a call, right? So these people are so highly motivated to participate in politics. If we call them, they're already active citizens, and ask them to call their representatives, man, they're listening. Because when you get a call from your mother-in-law, she's like, you better vote for this bill. Better believe you're listening. Thanksgiving is coming. And the reason that we do this is because, I hate to say it, but some constituents are more equal than others, right? Because they care a lot more about what these people think than what these people who don't even vote think, aren't even registered, right? So one of the things a lot of legislators will do is they'll look up the voter registration of people when they call in, or how their staff do it, right? In Vermont, it doesn't happen as much because they don't have as much staff and they're just better people. But you know, a lot of times they'll look it up and see if you vote. If you don't vote, you're not registered. You know, like you don't really matter, right? Doesn't that suck? It does, because they still should represent you. But it's the key to us understanding something that's very powerful. Politicians are most responsive to high propensity voters, people who are likely to vote and likely to vote in their party, and donors and supporters, right? So if we can identify these people somehow, like say with a voter file, then we can go into their districts and have those people call legislators. We can get their ear pretty quick, right? Because a lot of those people agree with us. Like we were working on money in politics, we call it Republican districts, like 80% of those people agree with us too, right? So we just need those people to call their reps and be like, I know you, I'm a Republican, I speak your language, and I think this is wrong, and I think you should vote this way. That's a powerful weapon you can wield. So when we're doing legislative action, this is one of my favorite tips and tricks. Not the only thing to do, just something we could do, right? Electoral action. So you can find this grid online, but the Democrats have it wrong. Surprise. I'm going to teach you a different way. So what the Democrats would say, or the progressives would say, okay, what you want to do is you want to never talk to these people. This is partisanship, right? So these are Democrats, unknown Republicans, or you can think about this, progressives, independents, Republicans. Always vote, sometimes vote, never vote, right? Got it? Okay. So what the Democrats typically tell you to do is don't talk to these people. They're Democrats and they always vote. Has anybody ever heard that? Okay. Horrible idea.
No, we
Why is that a horrible idea? But if they always vote, they're Democrats. They're always going to vote. They're always going to vote your way. Why would you talk to people that are always going to buy what you're selling, never going to buy anything else, and to advocate your brand, right? So these are the first people to talk to on the timeline, okay? We're going to create some brand advocates up here, right? These people that always vote Democrat are some of the best people you can talk to if you're running for office, right? Because they are the people that talk to their friends and their families and their neighbors. They'll tell John about, you know, Martha, who's running for state representative, because they actually talk about politics. They probably drive their family crazy. I can see who that is on a voter file, okay? It's Steve Perry. Okay, then the next thing you want to do is identify voters, right? So there's these unknown people. The reality is that these aren't like independents, right? These aren't our high-end independents. I think about who I vote for in every case. I look for the best politician no matter the party. That's not these people. These people are like, I don't really care. I haven't thought about it. They'll knock on the door the weekend before the election and they'll be like, who are you voting for? And they're like, no idea. I don't know, you know? And the reason why is because most people that are in this column, they're actually Democrats or Republicans. They're just not marked that way on a voter file. Or they don't like to call themselves that, right? Even those people that call themselves independents on the doorstep, they vote 90% for one party, guaranteed. I've seen a voter file of every person in the country plotted on a map, and it had everyone in this room that's registered to vote. It's like big black Democrats, little black Republicans, and then nothing is right here. You know what I mean? It's like independents that you're thinking about don't exist, right? But there's a lot of people in here that are actually Democrats. We just don't know that they're Democrats, or we don't know that they're progressives. So we gotta go knock on their doors and identify them. You know, do you mostly vote Democrat or mostly vote Republican, right? Then you can throw them into one column or the other. Put them in boxes, as I know Steve doesn't like, but it's useful, okay, Steve? We're winning elections here. Is that okay? Can we put them in these boxes? All right. Then after that, you want to do early voting. You want to go back to these people that are sometimes that never vote. And I learned like machine politics in Southern Indiana from this like crazy gay angry redneck who was awesome. Taught me a lot about politics. There's actually a movie about him too called Electoral Dysfunction. And he taught me about Democrats most of the time. They work out of the county, they work out of the city, they're sick, they can't get out to vote. Make sure they know that they can vote at home by mail, right? So you can go and you can sign up people, get a ballot delivered to them. And then there's like this sheet called a matchback from the county where they tell you everybody that's requested an absentee ballot, their partisanship, whether or not they've received the ballot, and whether or not they've returned it. So if you know those 4 pieces of information, you can look up every Democrat that has requested an absentee ballot who has received it in the mail but not returned it. And then we could go talk to those people, right? And run up the score before election day, right?
That's all online?
You have to go to the county clerk or to the town clerk, depending on how it works here. But it's a public record, so they're required to give it to you by law. So we've done some early voting over here, and then, okay, we're coming in near to the election. We know there were some of these people in here that we identified, they're not Republican, they're not Democrat, or they haven't decided how they're going to vote in this specific race. We need to go talk to them and persuade them. We want to focus on the people that we identified that always vote, that are not going to vote. We don't know which way they're going to vote, right? Because we know they're going to be there on election day, but we don't know how they're going to vote. These folks, we don't know how they're going to vote. They never vote, so it doesn't really matter, right? How they would vote if they would ever vote. These people matter a lot because we know they're going to be there. So every one of these is really valuable. And then you can do some of that down here too. And then I always like to throw in a little GOTV surprise to the Republicans that always vote. So we were running against this candidate. You might actually know him, Steve Valancourt in New Hampshire. He like stomped on our resolution in the New Hampshire State House. It was like literally the person that made sure it got defeated and like argued against it in committee, argued against it on the floor, and used some procedural motion to like screw us. So I moved into his district. That's why I live in New Hampshire instead. And I literally didn't just like move into the state and be close. I didn't move into like his town, you know? I was like, no, I need a house in his district so I can vote against him. And then we knocked on doors, and we knocked on a lot of doors. And we got people that normally don't vote, you know, who kind of are Democrats who drop off, or progressives that drop off. We got them to vote early. We got a lot of other people to vote on election day. And then we put up door hangers at like, 3 o'clock in the morning, the day of the election. We'd be like, vote today. But one of the things we delivered was a handwritten letter by somebody in the community that talked about the things that Steve Valancourt had done, which included saying Zig Heil from the floor of the New Hampshire State House, included calling the congresswoman that was running as a Democrat ugly as sin, which the Republican repudiated him, the Republican woman congressman repudiated him for saying that. And he had, people at the State House, like on both sides, just didn't like the guy. We got this handwritten letter, and we took it and we delivered it to all the strong Republicans, women, right? And so you get this, you come home, you see a manila envelope on your doorstep, it says Betty, right? And you grab that envelope, because who drops off an envelope? It's obviously someone who knows you. You open it up and it's a handwritten letter. It looked handwritten, it was really printed, right? And you open up that letter and you start reading it, and it's about this guy, Steve Valancourt. You know who Steve is, right? He's that guy that's always giving us a bad name. And you read about the things he's done, and then it just says, look, whatever you do, just don't vote for him. We're not saying vote the other way, but don't vote for that guy, leave that one blank. That guy lost by 100 votes. And so, if you could put in a GOTV surprise, think about defeat them in detail, right? Stripping away their support. These are people that would always vote for him. But because they knew the facts and we've exposed his true colors, a lot of those women in that district were like, no thanks. I'm not going to vote for that guy. And we won by less than 100 votes, about 100 votes. So this is kind of the timeline, right, down here. Build your base, ID voters, do early voting, persuade voters, and then GOTV, which means get out the vote, for anybody who doesn't know that, GOTV. And you want to get out your own vote, right? You want to be turning out these people, right, and sometimes never vote. These people, this is when you can kind of ignore them. They're probably working with you. But these people that sometimes never vote, that's when you want to be talking to them during get out the vote. But also take the time to deliver a little surprise to the other side if you can. So then there's direct action. Has anybody seen any of these photos? Yeah? Cool. Because I did most of them.
You in any of them?
Yeah, all of them. I don't know if I'm in this one, but we helped with that when I was at the Young Turks.
This is a big surprise here. This is a big surprise. Paul Manafort.
Is it really? Are you serious? Are you joking?
Take a look.
Does it look like him?
I don't know if that's him, but that's me. Okay. So, this is an awesome action. It was during inauguration. Do you guys know that white tower that's kind of in the middle? Right? Okay, so like that was like 20 yards that way. So that's how close we were to the podium. Like you can kind of, if you look closely, you can kind of see like the kids of Trump kind of like do this while he's taking the oath, right? So he's like, I, Donald J. Trump. He stood up and started screaming the preamble to the Constitution, like in the middle of the VIP section, right? Like there's some guy, there's like the people here are like electors, right? Republican electors and stuff, right? That's how close we were. Now the important thing with direct action is it should be strategic. So what would the strategy be of disrupting the inaugural oath on the day that Donald Trump is going to take the presidency? What would the strategy be?
He looks bad.
Visible.
Demoralize the other side.
Visible, demoralize the other side?
Yeah.
Getting there.
Inspire people to act.
Inspire people to act.
Be
Yep.
loud, louder than he.
Surprise.
Surprise, be louder than he is. So,
It's the vision, it's the grand vision, what do you do?
yeah, exactly. So they use this on CNN all the time, still to this day. We wanted to create a visual image that would communicate to the country that if you resist, they won't kill you. Right? So like, everybody's really afraid, right? And that fear is like, it's animal, you know? And it's like, maybe I'll just stay where I am and be safe, right? But what we wanted to do is disrupt the inauguration in such a visible way that everybody in the country watching, or everybody that saw this picture, would understand, you can resist too, right? Young and old, black and white, no matter who you are, where you live in the country, if we can do it here, and they're not going to throw us in prison and lock away the key, right? Then you can too. And that was our strategy, right? And they still use this image every time they talk about.
Did you get pulled out on?
Oh yeah. It's funny they didn't even arrest us; they just detained us. So yeah, but I've been arrested a lot. It's true. Democracy Spring, unprecedented. Over 1,000 people get arrested at the state capitol for free and fair elections. Ronaldo was there, right? And Democracy Spring Crew is great. This one's particularly funny. It was handing out Russian flags with Trump's name on them in gold at the CPAC conference, which happens to be this week. Anybody want to go? I got flags. MDC. So, if you want to go, yeah, I got a flag for you if you want to come. This is, let me go back to this. What is the strategy of doing that? Embarrassment, link them, expose them. His true colors, he's the wrong kind of red, white, and blue, right? What else? What would be the strategy of this?
He belongs to another system, not ours.
Right, so he's a traitor, right? Okay, so here's our specific strategy for that day. This day was the day that Donald Trump was going to put Russia behind him and pivot onto whatever thing he thought was going to be his agenda, right, going forward. And they were just not going to talk about it anymore. Literally, that's what the speech was at CPAC last year. It was the end of ever talking about Russia ever again, right? And so we came in that specific day, made these flags. There's like this miracle story of how this even all came together. Like, the universe and God were definitely on our side with this one. And we get in there, we deliver these flags, they kick us out, they round them up, we get more flags, we come back in, we distribute all the flags, and then boom, some of the media take a picture of it, and it's around the world in seconds. And the top headline for CPAC wasn't about whatever he talked about. I literally can't even remember what it was. It was about these Russian flags. Like #1 on Reddit, people didn't know if like supporters or opponents had actually handed them out. It was like very unclear if like they were like literally like waving Russian flags, and it just drew a ton of attention around the world to the fact that there were like people waving Russian flags at Donald Trump with his name on it, right? So we dominated the news cycle, and we stole his opportunity to pivot off of this storyline and drive the agenda. We drove the agenda back into the Russia Gate narrative, right? So that was our strategic goal. This is a 30-foot banner we dropped. It was literally like, it's like as big as this, bigger than that wall, than that curtain. It was giant. It was so big that the resist didn't even show up, except for like in this picture, at the opening day of the Washington Nationals game. He was supposed to throw the opening pitch, but he didn't show up. It would have been awesome. And then Occupy Wall Street, this is US Uncut, which is We're Not Broke. The reason I bring up this slide and I'm so focused on strategy is sometimes you can do this kind of stuff, right? And it's just like fun, it's doing something. We got signs, we went and yelled together, and got something to eat afterwards. Don't just do something with direct action. That's like the temptation, right? It can feel really good, but not actually be strategic, not lead to any goals, not lead to your larger vision, right? So always with direct action, have like a strategy in mind that's really concrete. What is the goal you're seeking to achieve? did you achieve it after? We really, with this action, wanted to disrupt the oath of office, so he'd have to retake it later, right? We didn't quite get that far, right? We weren't quite that loud, but it's still a pretty good action. But always have a strategy in mind with direct action. And then here's some digital tools that are really good. The Action Network, which a lot of the folks in Women's March and Indivisible use, are some of the best tools that some of the best labor unions in the country and progressive organizations use. They're available to you for free. You can start your own organization, use the Action Network. It's awesome. NGP Van, some people will be familiar with from like democratic politics. It's like the voter list and call list and things like that. YouTube, Facebook, those are kind of obvious. Twitter's pretty good too, but Twitter's kind of an echo chamber. They're not really good for organizing. Facebook is really good for getting out the message and creating events and groups. Free conference call HD. They might actually charge now. I was actually on a conference call the other day where they charge, but find a free conference calling service. This can be really useful when you're doing virtual organizing. Hustle is a great texting program that they usually offer on a free trial basis. Calling volunteers to get them to show up is kind of an old way of doing things. I don't know if anybody here got a call from me from our list, but what you really want to be doing is be on Hustle and texting people. I have a 95% response rate, which is like, if you've
I'll
ever
just
called.
say one quick thing. My wife uses that. She said, be careful when you're doing it and people hear you in the perimeter and you're saying, I hustle this amount of people. It doesn't go over. No, really.
I'll mention that to the creators.
I said, honey, you gotta think what you're saying.
Thankfully, you can say, I pixeled this amount of people and no one will say anything. This is like,
You have backed or disabled members, this is a really great way to
Yeah.
contact ableist bias and make sure all people are really on that.
yeah, so Hustle's a really great tool set. I haven't even gotten into using it as much as we really should, but it's pretty awesome. Anybody can do it, it's all virtual online. Pixlr is like online Photoshop, so if you don't have Photoshop, you want to make memes or add text to photos, Pixlr is a great way to do it. Slack, a lot of people like, probably good for your like core team, okay? Because it takes a little getting used to. But a lot of people like Slack for organizing. I really prefer Google Groups because it's like email, and everybody knows email, right? Everybody can do email. So Google Groups are kind of like how Americans Take Action is founded in Wolfpack before that. And then Fusion Tables are like an interesting way to upload, like if you can't get access to NGP Van, you can upload a list of addresses there to Fusion Tables and it will show you a map of them, right? So it's actually my favorite way to canvas. I don't even like using NGP Van as much as I like using Google Fusion Tables. So those are some tools. I mean, the most important ones are like Action Network, Facebook, and probably like Hustle, right? And a good conference call system, so you can make conference calls with your folks. But that's a digital toolbox for some of the stuff you can do.